Okay, so I had a previous video where I was starting up this vintage automobile with just using supercapacitors instead of a battery. In this video I'm actually going to just be charging it up to 12 volts using the data acquisition in order to calculate the amount of power that's actually being taken out of the capacitor bank, and get an idea of what kind of reserve cranking time I would have with this system at 12 volts. More than likely I'm going to end up with a small battery in parallel to keep them charged. So in the previous video where I used 14.7 volts to see if it would fire stone cold in the winter, I really won't have that much reserve capacity all the time, so this should give me a good idea. So basically I've just disabled the ignition system on this motor so it won't start. And as soon as the capacitors are charged, I will record the amount of amperage through a current shunt that leaves the capacitors while it's rolling over and monitor the voltage. Okay, so you can see we're at about 11.5 volts. We're down to 10.3 volts, and we're going to see if I reconnect the ignition, if I can still get it to fire. Mistake last time of not actually turning on the data acquisition system. So let's see if I can get a good charge and discharge curve and actually log it. Well, it appears I finally flooded it out, playing with it. But we'll see what kind of discharge curve and how much reserve capacity those capacitors offer me. So this is the discharge curve that I got from turning the engine over. And I was starting at about 12 volts. As soon as the starter activates, it actually drops it down to about 11 volt area. Part of this might be the fact that I did have longer leads coming from the capacitors to the battery, so I would probably want to shorten those because that is a fair amount of voltage drop for starting the car on capacitors. With the battery that wouldn't be bad, but I really shouldn't be seeing that much. And I ended up getting about 10 seconds area of cranking time before the voltage dropped down below 8 volts where it started to struggle to turn over. Looking at this, I will probably want to look at what kind of secondary battery I will have, a small light battery, possibly trying to figure out a safe way to run a lithium battery to keep the weight down still, because when you have a vehicle that is carbureted and doesn't have any chokes on it, it's relatively easy to either flood the vehicle or to have to turn it over and pump it a number of times with throttle to get it to start and keep running. So I'm a lot more nervous about actually putting these capacitors into this older car and having it reliably start than I would on a newer car with fuel injection. But it kind of gives me an idea of what options I have and how well it would work in this application. So we'll see if I'm going to pursue this or not in the future. Hopefully you found this interesting, and thank you very much for watching.